Hello, and welcome to the Love Life, Live Life Fitness podcast, the premier podcast where we talk about topics ranging from health and fitness, performance and sport, and wellness and rehabilitation. We tie these topics together to understand their impact on our daily lives and our journey to be the best version of ourselves. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello and welcome to today's episode. Today we would like to welcome Kirsten. Thank you, Kirsten, for coming on. And would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. A little about myself. I am an early career regulatory scientist. I actually work in women and newborn and musculoskeletal and rehabilitation research. So I am a couple years out of my PhD. I actually work in an area of research doing very specific skills and tasks that I don't have experience in. So from that, I could really say that I'm a person that definitely likes to take on a challenge. I grew up as a multi-sport athlete, kind of having my hand in everything and really just trying to excel in education. And once I found research, I kind of just took off from there.
Awesome. That's really awesome. I would say, in your experience that you're going through right now in your current work environment, how would you say your athletics and your experience being a multi-sport athlete has kind of translated, or any things that you learned being a multi-sport athlete into your work environment now?
That's a really great question. I don't think at the time, growing up, I played basketball, softball, I golfed, I played volleyball, I even ran track and field, just try and be faster for softball. I don't think at the time, right, you realize as a child just what types of skills and resiliency you get to build in sport until you get older. And then maybe, you're an adult or you're in the workplace or you're trying to get into a new type of exercise. Uh, I really think having those sport experience as a kid really taught me to keep going. You're going to lose games, you're going to lose matches, you're going to mess up. Maybe somebody on the team makes an error. Like, you still have to go to the next practice, you still have to go to the next thing. So I think it's really translated not only into like how I function professionally, how I train my body, how I live in my personal life is really just, hey, I'm always constantly learning. I'm going to learn from this mistake. I'm going to learn from this win. I'm going to learn from this loss. And, I have to go to work the next day. I have to go to the gym the next day. I have this sport obligation to show up to. And it really just keeps you in the mindset of showing up, not only for yourself, but your teammates, your coworkers, your colleagues, right? Your students, whatever type of realms you're in, those social communities that developed around me through sport, I think I naturally just carried through education and now into my professional career.
That's awesome. The ability to be like resilient, and that you say from your experiences, being able to, show up the next day, even if say you didn't want to, or you have something that you might not necessarily want to do. I think that is such an important factor of resilience. And you kind of mentioned the fact of, consistency. When you're able to be consistent, you can start building that resiliency and vice versa. How would you say right now, in terms of consistency and resilience, um, how would you say that really empowers you throughout a day to day?
Hmm. I instantly thought of a roller coaster, right? There are times where you're going up and down and upside down, and you may not know what's coming next, and rolling with it. And it's not even just rolling with the punches per se, but it is, what do you do after that? What's the thing that happens after you get knocked down? Uh, Resiliency has just continuously taught me it's less about the emphasis on that thing I just went through or that thing that just happened to me. It's more about, okay, this happened for me, this happened to me. Now what? What do I do next? Right? Because a lot of times, if I think back, for instance, like a sport injury, um, I've torn my ACL 3 times now. Not proud of it, but there is valuable lessons and experiences that I went through these recoveries. And yes, I'm going through one right now. So maybe me speaking on resiliency is very applicable to what I'm going through. But it really has been less about this is how I got injured, this is what happened, I wish I shouldn't have done this, I can't believe, like, there is less emphasis on me guilting myself over the error, over the injury, over the problem. And it's more, okay, this happened, now what do I do? How am I going to show up for rehab? How am I going to show up pre-surgery? How am I going to show up post-surgery? And when I get to look back at, like, let's say those ACL surgeries and those things, I don't necessarily think about every single detail of, how that injury occurred. I think about, okay, cool. I have 3 months. I'll be back to myself. Okay, I have 6 months. Cool. My last surgery, I was running at 9 months. I'm not thinking about, the details that set me back. I'm thinking about all of the strides that put me forward.
Those strides that put you forward and that positive mindset, would you say um, having that positive mindset, do you think that helps you get further, like on a day-to-day basis through, say, things that you're dealing with personally, professionally, having that positive mindset? And I know when we were talking beforehand, I can tell you have a really positive mindset in everything that you do. Do you think that is something that was learned, or do you feel as though
Mm,
you had that like naturally in you, and a lot of things, the
mm,
experiences that you had, just kind of enhanced that?
mm. Wow. What a question. Have you read Mindset by Carol Dweck?
I have not.
Highly, highly recommend it. It is a book about mindset, and it really breaks down in simple terms growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And when I got the acceptance letter to my PhD program, I got a little package in the mail, and that book was in there. And that's actually, I do a lot of reading, but hands down, that book is the 101 guide to understand how your brain works and then how to change it, how to shift it, how to maneuver it. Um, so ironically, I would say I've primarily most of my life I had a fixed mindset. Yes, in sport, right? There were moments of this growth mindset, right? I can improve my skills, I can get better, I could study more and get more A's. Like there were moments of that growth mindset when it came to producing performance. I got really, really good at learning when to turn that growth mindset on. But one of, I guess, a minor pitfall or downfall of sport, right, is you win or you lose. You show up or you don't. You perform well or you don't. And so sometimes those extreme black and whites of results I got addicted to. And what I mean addicted to is I started to develop like an all or nothing mindset. I'm going to go all the way and everyone else on my team better show up like I do so we can do our best, right? And if that didn't happen, I would get really frustrated. And then it would kind of lead me down like a cycle pattern of okay, well, I need to study for 10 hours and if I don't get an A, I have to punish myself. And then really going through higher education, going through my master's, going through my PhD, I really started to do neural rewiring with sport, with my personal life, with my professional life. And I'm not going to get everything done. I'm not going to write a dissertation in 1 week. I'm not going to work on a study for 1 month and that's it. I really had to decondition because there was no way I was going to be successful to get through these degrees or get, the internships or jobs I wanted because I would just be cornering myself. So I would really say developing a growth mindset is something I've been learning and constantly am having to remind myself of. Uh, there are times where that fixed mindset comes in. Like, for instance, I recently tore my ACL skiing, and my brain instantly goes, okay, Kirsten, well, you're not going to ski anymore. You've now torn your ACL 3 times skiing. Like, you can't do that, and maybe there is some merit and truth to that, right? I'm getting older. I need to be more careful about my joints and bone health. But maybe there isn't some truth to that. Maybe I can still go back out there next season and maybe this injury won't happen again. It's all about how I choose to frame what I do next. And sometimes those thoughts are hard because are we typically saying these types of things to our friends or our family or people we talk to on a daily basis? No, because these are internal thoughts that we have, right? And if I'm constantly saying, it needs to be all or nothing, I need to go to the gym 7 days a week, or I'm just not going to go. Maybe if I told a friend that, they would help me break down that fixed mindset. But a lot of times, most of us aren't saying these things out loud. We're keeping them to ourselves. So in order to, transition from this fixed to growth mindset, you need to give yourself patience. You need to give yourself grace. And you really need to know it's a practice. It's not a check mark, right? It's not something on your to-do list. It's not, okay, cool, I had a growth mindset today. Now I'm just going to continue to have one. You really have to constantly reframe your thinking or the thoughts that come in, right? Or what you're telling yourself.
That's so true. That fixed versus growth mindset. I feel as though some people who may be listening might be going through one or the other or both. And I think with your experiences and kind of seeing how you might be such in a fixed mindset, but depending on how maybe you have self talk to yourself, you might be able to transition to a growth mindset depending on situations, scenarios, and whatever may have happened in your life. But I think you touched on a really good point of giving yourself grace and understanding that you might have been in a situation that could have been very traumatizing or affected you in some serious way, but giving yourself the grace to again take time to process or heal as you need to, but also understand the next day is going to happen regardless, and that you can do it. You mentioned before that sometimes you got to be your own advocate or a self advocate for yourself to get to a point in which you can consistently or more often have a growth mindset. So that
Right.
is such a great point of bringing up. And on that topic of growth and fixed mindset, um, on a day-to-day basis, how would you say you have the balance or one of those types of mindsets in terms of your day-to-day professional work?
As I mentioned, I work in regulatory science, which I didn't have a background in, right? So I really came into this position excited for the challenge to learn something new. I think as an academic for most of my life, I loved the opportunity to learn, to grow, to digest information, to expel information, right? To help other people. And so going into a job where 80% I have that research skill set, right? But that 20% of regulatory FDA documentation, liaisoning between physicians and research staff, that excited me because I didn't know that. And I would get to come into this, which I still do every day. I'm almost 2 years in my position where I'm constantly asking questions. I'm constantly coming in with that growth mindset. I don't know everything. I'm not going to know everything. You know, if I look at me today versus me at day one of this job, have I learned a ton? Absolutely. Are there days where, right, I maybe make a mistake or I should have known something? Yeah, but that's okay, right? At the end of the day, are the patients okay? Right? Is anything in non-compliance? Right? There are foundations that I've been able to learn through this job to know when something's okay and when something's not. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm constantly asking questions. I have no problem sending an email and asking something. I am now in the mindset where I'd rather ask a question, and I'm almost hoping that one day somebody replies and says, Kirsten, this is a stupid question, right? Because we were always told, there's no such things as stupid questions. Or, we were too scared to ask questions because we would think, oh gosh, what if I'm supposed to know this? Now I'm in the mindset where I'm like, I'd rather ask questions and either reconfirm my knowledge or learn how someone thinks about something from a different angle, because that's going to help me as well. Uh, versus I'm never to ask. I'm always going to ask. I hope one day somebody says, Kirsten, I already told you this. Kirsten, that's a dumb question. I hope for that. And I kind of say that comically because past versions of me would have said, Kirsten, don't ask that question. You should just know. You should read more, you should take better notes, right? And I would always almost guilt myself into why I shouldn't have asked. But through the PhD process and really learning how to advocate for yourself, right? And put yourself out there and know what types of questions to ask, there really isn't any guilt or shame associated with, being in your day-to-day career and asking questions. What if on the other side, that colleague that you ask a question to, what if that builds their confidence because they can confidently help someone else, and then they're like, wow, really cool, I'm so glad I knew that process and I could tell Kirsten that, because then that just shows how much I could help the next person. So it's almost like a ripple effect of kind of going into my day to day with, okay, this is what's on my docket, whether that's my to-do list, whether that's, more patient facing, whether that's, behind the computer screen, whatever it is. I'm like, okay, this is the percent of what I can control and what I know. And this is the percent I don't know what's going to go on today and that I can't control. And I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, I'm going to show up with my best skill set. I'm going to show up ready to ask questions. And at the end of the day, I did what I could in the time that I allocated to my job. And that's enough, and if any point, right, that changes or something happens, I know I'll be okay. Maybe not initially, but at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, if this process is working, I'm going to keep tinkering it. I'm going to keep messing with it. I'm going to keep, always showing up as my best, even if it looks a little different. Um, I think really that day to day is having confidence in the skills you've been able to develop, but then having that knowledge, humbleness, and acceptance that there's probably a lot you don't know, but you're still going to come at it from the right angle.
And I think that's such an important thing that you talked about just now, about not being afraid to ask questions, even if it's multiple questions, because again, that question that you may try to hide in yourself and not say anything, that could have been the question that changed someone else's perspective. Or in the case of, maybe you have a boss or advisor, that could be the question that, like you said, builds their confidence and helps them out. So I think that's such a great thing of not being afraid, trusting your skills, and having the confidence to say that, hey, just because I know something, it can hurt to either know it better, it can hurt to know someone else's perspective. And, that applies to a lot of other aspects of life outside of work. But I think that's such an important skill. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Of course.
I know we kind of talked about a little bit about your um, athletic life and how the skills of, say, resiliency has translated to your professional and work life. How would you say overall, and that can be included, but in your own opinion, how has fitness influenced your life?
Mhm. I don't know who I would be without it. And I'm not saying that in a context of identity, right? If I didn't have fitness, who would I be? I'm saying it in the context of it has shaped me so much, good, bad, high, low, everything in between, since I was, I don't know, 3 or 4 up until now, that it is integral to who I am, right? Separate from the identity. It is the way I do things, and it's the reason that I do things. For instance, I mentioned being a multi-sport athlete pretty much through my childhood and late teens. While I was in college, I was a bodybuilder. And I really started to just learn the importance of lifetime movement. I think that was also because I was a kinesiology undergraduate. And I really just started to kind of put two and two together of, oh, okay, so when I took biomechanics, this is why when I pitched for a little bit when I was in softball, and this is why I'm doing this. And then everything kind of started to add on another. So I would say up until now, right, I would say I'm like a recreational athlete. I'm an active gym rat, ski, climb. I do a lot of cycling. Everything's just built on another. And the ways I view fitness are definitely different now, right? Lifetime movement is extremely important to me, right? How am I showing up? How does my body feel today? Am I sore? What's going on? How functional are my movements? And it's less about performance, right? And it's more about how it feels in my body and form. Form is number one. I also have been a personal trainer for on and off, I don't know, 5, 10 years. And the biggest thing for me is form, no matter what age of a person I'm working with, right? It's how, like the saying goes, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So, if I can show up for myself today, and for example, yes, I'm going through rehab for my knee. I cycled for 5 minutes today, and pre-injury, right? I cycle 30 to 60 minutes every day, right? I could easily say, well, Kirsten, this isn't enough. Like you're not performing like you were. You're not cycling like you were. Or I could look at it from the lens and say, I was able to do a complete repetition today. I did 5 minutes. Like that is what my body is allowing me to do right now. Tomorrow's going to get better. I'm going to get one step better every time. So fitness is also enabling me to do activities as I age. It will continue to allow me to be involved in sports, or group activities, group exercises that I want to be involved in. I do live in Salt Lake City, which is a very outdoorsy destination for people. I want to be able to go hike a mountain. I want to be able to go ski. I want to be able to go climb after work one day. I don't want my lack of fitness to be the reason why I can't do something. I want my ableness and fitness to be the reason I can do everything. In a nutshell.
No, that's really empowering in the sense that there's definitely listeners here who may be going through rehabilitation processes themselves and having that mindset of being an athlete saying, I'm going to get one step better every single day. That is so important, especially when you're going through a rehab process, because every day does matter. Every day getting back to the normal or maybe the new normal, that's important. And I think that how in your experience how fitness has made molded you and made you to the person that you are today, I think that shows one, your character and your resiliency and consistency and everything that we've been talking about. I think that just speaks a lot. And again, have the you have the ownership of yourself to say that you carry those characteristics and those abilities to be where you are today. So that's great on you. Um,
Thanks. Yeah, and I just one thing to add. Yes, I try and be positive. Yes, I try and remind myself, right? There's always tomorrow. There are so many days where I say PT was so hard today, or I don't want to go work out, or I really don't want to cycle right now, right? And there are some days I don't do it, and that's okay, right? And there's some days I do it, and then I'm like, "Ah, I'm so glad I did that." Regardless if I do it or I don't, right? It's just the ownership and accountability of my decision, and there are so many times, right, where like I said, if I really don't want to cycle today and I do it, and even after the workout, maybe I'm like, I still don't feel great. Why did I even do that, right? And maybe I'm in a negative spiral. Why did I even do that? It didn't even make a difference. But then, right, I step outside of that and I have to snap myself back and say, wait, you still did it. Regardless of how it looked and how it turned out, you did it instead of not doing it. Doing something is better than doing nothing. And I think that kind of goes like to the lifestyle, exercise, and medicine principles is doing a little bit of something is better than not doing something, you know? So I do have days where I don't do something, but I'm not allowing that to become a chronic pattern, right? I'm not constantly giving myself those excuses. Yeah, some days I am, more sensitive, or I need a rest day or whatever it is. But I also know mentally this isn't going to be every day. This is a 1 day thing. This is a 2 day thing. This is a whatever time period. I'm going to get back out there and just, like I've mentioned previously, just giving yourself grace. We're going to have times where, we're kicking butt, we're in the gym. We were there 23 days out of 30 this month. And then the next month you may be 13. Okay. And yes, you're looking at your chart and you're like, okay, what was going on? Maybe other life things were going on, and that's okay. But it's all about how your relationship is with how you perceive your performance or your exercise, right? Because I could work out twice. Let's say in March, I worked out twice. I did because I got injured. And I could look back and say, well, I could have done more. I could have just gone to the gym on crutches, and I didn't. And that's okay. I don't have anger towards myself because I didn't show up in that way, because I have a new opportunity every day that I wake up and there's breath in my lungs and my eyes open. and I get to try it again.
That needs to be hung up in the Louvre, quoted somehow, because that perspective is huge. Being able to be thankful that you woke up, even the littlest things, that you get to breathe, you get to see, you have your senses, and you may not be in the best situation wherever you're at currently or within a certain time period, but
Yeah.
there is an opportunity that lies the next day, and that opportunity, it can lie a lot on your perspective too. So, thank you for that. Kind of onto that point and talking about perspective and just being able to continue that resiliency through your day to day, even if you don't have the greatest of days or not. What advice would you give to others who are going through anything in life, good, bad, in between, anything in life that maybe want to kind of get into that same perspective, or even maybe get to where you are in terms of, hey, I was a student athlete, I want to go undergrad, master's, PhD. Anything advice that you would say to anyone listening relating to this topic or just in general?
You have to advocate for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself. And sometimes that's going to look like an email. Sometimes that's going to look like you raising your hand in class. Sometimes that's going to look like you joining the group fitness class. You have to advocate for yourself. Nobody knows what you know. So when I was working on my dissertation, I had a mentor tell me one time, and it forever stuck with me because I was consulting with her about some analysis that I was wrapping up, and it was kind of like a breath of fresh air because I was like, I'm finally done with the analysis. And she said, how cool does it feel? I said, what? She said, how cool is it? You are the only person in the world right now that knows what you know. And I just said, what do you mean? Because obviously my brain is like, data analysis, this is my project, this is my baby. And she just said, you are the only person in the world that knows what you know right now. And that just really always stuck with me. And it doesn't have to be grandiose, right? It doesn't have to be a dissertation. It doesn't have to be a PhD. It could be, right, you going on your fitness journey, you wanting to get a new job, you wanting to try a new hobby. Nobody knows what goes inside your brain. What if someone out there wants to know what you know, or what you can provide, or what you can teach them? And I've tried to always remind myself of that, not from a sense of like ego. Come on, Kirsten. Of course, everyone wants to know what you want to know. But in the moments where I lack confidence, when I am uncertain, when I'm unsure which road to take, I just have to say, somebody out there wants to know this thing that I'm scared of. Somebody wants me, if I don't step forward and try this new job or this new thing, what if I don't get to help that person? Like, what if somebody out there is looking for exactly what I can provide? But I don't know it yet. I just have to take the chance and trust and bet on myself that I'm doing this for me and maybe it'll help other people, right? So it really just comes down to how do you advocate for yourself, right? What are your biggest dreams? I know that's a wild question because if I were to go up to someone in a coffee shop and say, "Hey, what's your biggest dream?" No, that person may not have an answer right away, but it really is, it just starts to expand your consciousness for how you want to show up. And having that mindset of why not try that thing? What if you do fail? Okay, it's better than not trying, right? But so many times we do get stuck in, well, I don't want to try, like it's not going to work out anyways. And whether that's valid or not is beside the case, but it's a matter of how badly do you want it, right? After my second ACL tear, do you know how many people said, Kristen, why do you keep skiing? I said, I love to ski, but you just had your second surgery, and at that time it was like within 3 years. I said, okay, but it was a fluke thing. That doesn't take away from the positive experiences and enjoyments that I have while I ski, and so there are totally a group of people that are valid and say, Kirsten's had 2 surgeries, she doesn't need to go back out there. And then there's another group of people that are saying, but she loves that injury is only a small percent of her experiences on the mountain. right? So there's always, I'm sure we've heard the saying, there's always two sides to every story. I think there's three sides to every story. For example, the glass, right? Some people see it half full, some people see it half empty, some people see there's water in the glass. All are right, all are true, all are valid. It's the agreement with yourself when you decide how you view it, because that's going to determine what you do next. If I just see it as half empty, it's not going to change within me because I see it that way. So, advocating for yourself and what you want, and maybe you don't know how to get there. None of us do. I was a first generation college student. I didn't know even what to do after college, let alone go to grad school, get into research, get X, Y, and Z internships. I just figured it out as I went. I asked questions, I connected with people, I built relationships with people. I tried things I learned I didn't want to do. I tried things I really loved, and I just continued to lean in one way or X-nay the other way and figure it out and go from there. And you just kind of go down your path. And if it's starting to look like something you don't want it to, you can take a step back and remember that you're in charge of changing it. Like, even if it's terrifying, you are the one that gets to change it if you want to.
That's so that's so true. Everything you said is so true. Not only like perspective, but advocating for yourself. Because at the end of the day, you're in control of your own life, and sometimes life, it can get hard due to a multitude of reasons. And when you're in those spots where life is hard, you even said this yourself, and you kind of got to the point that, you know even when life is hard, you have the ability to have or get to a growth mindset or get to a perspective that, there's opportunity that lies ahead. And that opportunity is going to, um, it may not be the brightest thing at first, but when you start to advocate for yourself, when you do those characteristics that you say that in your life have helped you, you start to start you start to view things as brighter and brighter. And I think
Right.
that's such an important factor, even on those bad days. And like you said, those bad days can come, and they they may not be as bright. They might be more dim than bright. That opportunity that lies ahead, and that kind of go getter mentality, that betting on yourself, as you said, mentality, advocating, all those things can definitely definitely make you or get to you to one step closer toward maybe where you want to be, or where you don't know where you're going to be, but it's in a positive direction. With you and your own perspective and everything that you've talked about today, how would you say the phrase love your life and live your life, what does that mean to you?
Hmm. I'm trying not to get emotional. We've just talked about we've talked about such good important things that are translatable to everyone. Everyone and everywhere, and I can confidently say that. So, what that really means to me is ownership and sense of self, right? How you show up for one thing is how you show up for everything. I am 99% confident every day of my life is not going to be amazing. And I'm okay with knowing that. Do I also know 25% of the time, maybe the days in my life are going to be what I think is the worst day of my life? Yeah. It's inevitable in just the human condition. We're going to have highs, we're going to have lows, right? We're going to have periods of stability. We're going to have things that happen unexpectedly. We're going to have things that happen exactly how we want them to. But having like the resilience and the flexibility that no matter what happens, you still get another chance. So you can live a life of a what if, or you can choose to live a life of why not. And I'm saying that from a place not only of like advice to others, but advice to myself. Do you know how many times throughout my life, up until even now, I've had an idea, or I should write this publication about this, or maybe I should start learning about this. Maybe I want to try this. And my brain goes, no, not right now. And then I challenge myself to say, but why not? Why? What if that resistance that my brain initially has to not do something is because I'm truly meant to do something? For example, transparently, I will say, I am writing a book, and this book is about my personal and professional experiences kind of tied together. For 2 years, I did not write, even though every single day I had the thought, okay, Kirsten, you're going to start writing today. Not only do people need to hear what you have to say, you want to share. You want to share what you have to say. You care what you have to say. Put it out there. And for 2 years, I said, nope, it's not time. I kept giving myself excuses. Nope, I'm not ready. Who cares what I have to say? And I just continued to spiral myself into lack of action. And then one day, very recently, I said, why not? Who cares if nobody reads it? I'll read it. I'm going to write it. And I started to take away the what ifs and started to implement the why nots. And that's terrifying for me to share that with you because, right, that is something I could easily keep putting in my 2 years worth of a pocket and say, nobody can know about this. As a chronic person that learned how to overachieve and be a performer through sports, through academia, through, career success, whatever it is, I learned to not talk about things until I've done them. And yes, 85% of me still is like that. But I've learned to have softness for that 15% of, you know what, I can share this. It's in progress and I'm working on it. What if one day somebody asks me about accountability and sees how my book is going? Maybe that like sparks me and excites me to keep writing. So I've really tried to learn to do what I say and be what I mean what I say, do what I mean. Because that sense of comfort and ownership with anything that goes right or wrong in my life, it's still up to me. And that's terrifying and exciting all at once.
And that's okay. Like being able to, be terrified and excited is something that kind of what makes it special because, you know, the unknown, it's the unknown, but having the perspective and the attitude to believe that just because you don't know what's on the other side of something doesn't mean you can't be happy, excited, or feel something positive about that. Something that just stood out to me, kind of what you were saying, is you start to replace the what ifs with the why nots. I think that is another one that needs to be hanged in the Louvre. But it's something that is is really is really motivational because a lot of times there's times when we get stuck on the what ifs, like what if this isn't going to work, what if this isn't the right time, what if, and then why not, meaning, you know, why not try it, why not do it. And that doesn't always apply to everything in life, but something that you're passionate about, like say maybe even writing a book or trying something new, the why not can be, as you said, it could be the motivation for someone else later on that maybe wanting to do something and they feel scared to exchange that what if with why not. So I think that was just something that really stood out to me with what you were saying. So thank you
Thank
for that.
you.
So Kristen, I don't want to hold you for too long. So I just want to say thank you very much for coming on and having a great talk and just telling us about your life and dropping so many gems in terms of how you can start to advocate for yourself, have that resilience, and just try to get your mindset into the mode of, hey, I may have good days, I may have bad days, but opportunity lies ahead for you and anything and everywhere that you're at. Where is the best place that people can find you or try to connect with you?
I am on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to connect with me. I'm on there pretty frequently. I'm very passionate about sharing about my background in academia and transitioning to like clinical and industry work. And that is probably my number one. I also recently started a Substack called The Truth Practice. So you can also find me on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kirsten, and really appreciate everything that you've been talking about. And I just hope you have a great day and just keep doing everything that you're doing because you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Likewise. See ya.
See you later. Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I also want to thank our wonderful guests for coming on today. For more content, you can find us on Instagram at Love Life, Live Life Fitness. Stay tuned for our next episode, and as always, love your life and live your life.